The white walls of the Vril ship hurt Taemin's eyes. Everything was too bright, too clean, too cold. He stood in the center of the diplomatic chamber with his hands clasped behind his back, trying to look calm. Inside, his heart was racing. "They're going to refuse," Jiwoo whispered beside him. She was his communications officer and had been with him for 5 years. She knew how to read situations like this. "Probably," Taemin agreed quietly. "But we have to try." Behind them, Hyun-sik shifted his weight nervously. The medical officer wasn't used to these high-stakes meetings. He preferred his lab and his research. But Taemin had insisted on bringing him. The Vril valued science, and having a medical expert might help. The Vril representative entered the room. Thexila was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, with a body that looked like black glass. 4 arms moved with perfect precision. Its face was all angles and faceted eyes that reflected light like an insect's. When it spoke, the translator device rendered its clicking sounds into cold, emotionless words. "Humanity will surrender the 3 colony worlds. In exchange, the Vril Empire will not destroy your species. These are generous terms." Taemin felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice level. "Those worlds have families, children, people who've lived there for generations. We can't just abandon them. Then they will die with you." Thexila's 4 arms spread wide. 17 species have refused our terms. 17 species no longer exist. Do not become the 18th. The negotiation went in circles for 2 hours. The Vril would not budge. They never did. Their empire had ruled this part of the galaxy for thousands of years because they were absolute, unfeeling, perfect. Then the ship shook. Alarms screamed through the air. Red lights flashed where white had been. Thexila's head snapped to the side, and it barked something in its own language. Other Vril rushed into the room, all clicking and chittering in panic. "What's happening?" Jiwoo demanded. "Rebels," Thexila said, and for the first time, Taemin heard something like emotion in its voice. Anger. "The broken carapace, traitors to the Empire." Another explosion rocked the ship. Taemin grabbed Jiwoo's arm to steady her. Hyun-sik fell against the wall. "Move!" Thexila commanded. "You will be taken to secure chambers." Vril guards surrounded them, pushing them toward the door. But in the chaos and smoke, something went wrong. Taemin got separated from his team. A blast door came down between them. He could hear Jiwoo shouting his name, but the metal was too thick. He was alone. The corridor he found himself in was darker than the rest of the ship. Emergency lights cast everything in red shadows. Taemin tried to find a way back, but every door was sealed. The ship's automated systems were in lockdown mode. He walked for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. The lower decks were a maze. Finally, he found a section that looked different. Not military, not living quarters. This place had the feel of a laboratory. Through a window in one door, he saw rows of containers. They looked like medical tanks filled with fluid. Inside each one, he could see shapes. Vril larvae, probably. He'd read that the Vril raised their young in communal vats. No parents, no families, just efficient growth from egg to adult. But one chamber was different. It was reinforced, separated from the others. Inside, not in fluid but in open air, was a small Vril child. It couldn't have been more than a few months old, maybe the equivalent of a human toddler. The child was curled in the corner of the chamber, and even through the glass, Taemin could see it was shaking. The child's carapace was wrong. Instead of pure black, it had patches of dark blue and green, and it only had 3 arms instead of 4. A defect, Taemin realized. The Vril were obsessed with perfection. This child didn't fit their standards. Another explosion rocked the ship, closer this time. The child in the chamber let out a sound that Taemin's translator couldn't process. But he didn't need a translation. That was the sound of pure terror. That was the sound of a child crying. Taemin didn't think. He just acted. He found the chamber controls and started pressing buttons. He didn't know Vril technology, but panic and fear were universal languages. The door hissed open. The child looked up at him with huge, faceted eyes. For a moment, they just stared at each other, human and alien, two beings that shouldn't have anything in common. Then the child moved. It scuttled across the floor with surprising speed and climbed up Taemin's leg, his waist, his chest. 3 small arms wrapped around his neck and held on tight. The child was trembling so hard that Taemin could feel it through his uniform. "Hey," Taemin said softly. "Hey, it's okay. I've got you." He had no idea if the child understood his words. But he remembered his sister's kids back on Earth, how they would run to him when they were scared, how sometimes words didn't matter as much as tone, as much as just being there. Taemin held the child close and made soft, soothing sounds. He stroked the strange, hard carapace like he would stroke a child's hair. The trembling slowly began to ease. They stayed like that as more explosions shook the ship. Taemin found a corner and sat down, keeping his body between the child and the door. He hummed a song his mother used to sing to him. The child made small, clicking sounds that might have been Vril crying or might have been something else. Time became meaningless. All that mattered was keeping this small being safe. Eventually, the explosions stopped. The alarms quieted. Taemin heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Heavy, multiple sets. Vril guards. The door burst open. 6 Vril warriors poured in, weapons raised. They stopped when they saw Taemin sitting on the floor with the child in his arms. One of them spoke in clicking sounds. The translator said, "Step away from the specimen." "It's not a specimen," Taemin said quietly. "It's a child." "You do not understand. That is defective material. It should not have been accessible. Release it." The child's grip on Taemin tightened. The small body pressed closer against his chest. "I don't think it wants to be released," Taemin said. The guards moved forward. The child let out a high-pitched sound of distress. Taemin stood up, still holding it, and stepped back. "Don't," he said. "You're scaring it." "It cannot be scared. It is Vril. We do not feel fear." "Really?" Taemin looked down at the trembling child in his arms. "Because I think it feels plenty." The guards seemed confused. They clicked at each other in their own language. Finally, one of them spoke into a communication device. A longer conversation happened that Taemin couldn't follow. Then the guard lowered its weapon slightly. "You will come with us. Bring the specimen. The Queen wishes to see you." The Queen? Hyunsik had mentioned her. Queen Vexara, the absolute ruler of the Vril Empire, the most powerful being in this part of the galaxy. "Now," the guard said. It wasn't a request. Taemin adjusted his hold on the child, making sure it was secure. "Okay," he said. "We're coming." As they walked through the corridors, escorted by armed guards, the child stayed pressed against Taemin's chest. Its 3 small arms held on tight, and Taemin realized with absolute certainty that whatever happened next, he wasn't going to let them hurt this small being, even if it cost him everything. 3 days had passed since the rebel attack. Taemin had been moved to different quarters on a massive flagship that made the first ship look like a small boat. These rooms were nicer than the sterile white chamber, but he was still a prisoner. The guards outside his door made that clear. They had taken the child away that first night. Taemin had tried to argue, but 6 armed Vril warriors didn't leave room for discussion. The child had cried out when they separated them. That sound still haunted Taemin's dreams. He hadn't seen Ji-woo or Hyunsik since the attack. He didn't know if they were alive or dead. Every time he asked, the guards ignored him. Now he stood in the largest room he had ever seen. The throne chamber stretched out like a cathedral, with ceilings so high they disappeared into darkness. Hundreds of vril filled the space, all standing in perfect rows. Warriors, scientists, advisors, the entire imperial court. At the far end, on a throne made of some black metal that seemed to absorb light, sat Queen Vexara. She was enormous, twice the size of any vril Taymin had seen. Her carapace wasn't pure black, but embedded with gold and silver that formed patterns across her body. 4 massive arms rested on the throne's armrests. When she looked at Taymin, her faceted eyes caught the light and threw it back like diamonds. "Commander Taymin of Earth," her voice boomed through the chamber. The translator made it sound cold and absolute. "You stand before the Vril Empire accused of interfering with imperial property." Taymin's mouth was dry. "I didn't steal anything, Your Majesty. I found a child during the attack. It was scared. I helped it. The specimen you refer to is not a child. It is defective genetic material scheduled for termination." "It's alive," Taymin said, louder than he intended. "It feels fear. It feels pain. That makes it a child, defective or not." A ripple went through the assembled vril. Movement, clicking sounds. The Queen's antennae twitched in a way that might have meant anything. "You know nothing of our ways, human. The vril do not have children in the manner your species does. We have genetic propagation. We have larval maturation cycles. We have efficiency. We eliminated the weakness of parental attachment 10,000 years ago." "Then why was it crying?" Taymin asked. "If it's just a specimen, just genetic material, why could I hear it crying?" Before the Queen could answer, a door opened to the side. Guards entered, and between them they carried the small vril child. It was being held in some kind of containment field that kept it suspended in the air. The child saw Taymin. Everything happened fast. The child let out a sound that was half shriek, half cry. It thrashed in the containment field with such force that the guards stumbled. The field flickered and failed. The child hit the ground and immediately started running. Its 3 legs moved in a strange pattern, but it was surprisingly quick. It crossed the polished floor of the throne chamber while hundreds of vril watched in stunned silence. It ran straight to Taymin. The small vril climbed up his body just like it had 3 days ago. 3 arms wrapped around his neck. The child pressed its hard carapace against his chest and made small clicking sounds that the translator couldn't process. But Taymin understood anyway. Relief, safety, home. He wrapped his arms around the child without thinking. "It's okay," he whispered. "I've got you." Then the child spoke. The translator rendered it clearly, perfectly, in a small voice that somehow carried through the entire throne chamber. "Father." Taymin froze. The child had called him father. In the vril language, but the translator left no doubt about the meaning. The silence in the throne chamber was absolute. Not a single vril moved. It was like time itself had stopped. Queen Vexara rose from her throne slowly. Her 4 arms spread wide. Her antennae were doing something complicated that Taymin's database couldn't identify. If he had to guess, he would say she looked shocked, maybe even horrified. "Impossible." The Queen's voice was barely a whisper, but it echoed in the silence. "Vril younglings do not bond. They cannot bond. We evolved past such primitive weakness millennia ago." She stepped down from the throne, moving closer. The crowd parted for her. "And certainly not with an alien, not with a mammal, not with something so different from us." But the child only held Taymin tighter, making soft, content sounds. A door at the side opened. Jiwoo and Hyunsik were brought in by guards. Taymin felt relief flood through him. They were alive. Jiwoo's eyes went wide when she saw him holding the alien child. Hyunsik's expression was pure fascination. The Queen gestured at Hyunsik. You are the medical specialist. Explain this." Hyun-sik was pushed forward. He pulled out his scanner with shaking hands and ran it over the child. The device beeped and displayed information. I can only give you a theory, Your Majesty, Hyun-sik said, his voice nervous. The child was kept in complete isolation. No contact with other Vril, no social interaction of any kind. Correct. Defective specimens are kept separate to prevent contamination. Right. Well, humans, we bond very easily, not just with our own species. We have a long history of adopting animals, raising them as family members. Dogs, cats, even animals that don't look anything like us. It's part of our psychology. We're wired to form attachments. The Queen's antenna twitched. Continue. During the attack, Commander Taemin found the child in a state of extreme distress. He showed it compassion, held it, comforted it. For a developing mind that has never experienced any form of care, that first instance of protective behavior would be significant. Hyun-sik looked at his scanner again. The child's brain patterns show a strong attachment response. In human terms, it has imprinted on the commander. It recognizes him as a parental figure. Vril do not have parental figures, the Queen said, but her voice had lost some of its certainty. Taemin spoke up, surprising himself with his boldness. Then why does your language have a word for father, Your Majesty? The Queen turned to look at him. For a long moment, she didn't speak. The child in Taemin's arms made a small yawning sound and nestled closer, apparently comfortable despite being surrounded by hundreds of alien beings. Our ancestors, the Queen finally said, before we perfected ourselves, used such terms. They are remnants, genetic memory we have not fully erased. Maybe you didn't erase it because you can't, Jiwoo said quietly. She stepped forward, despite the guards reaching for her. Maybe it's too fundamental to what life is. The Queen's head tilted. Explain. Almost every species in the galaxy that has achieved space travel has some form of family structure. Different forms, sure, but the basic idea of caring for young, protecting them, teaching them, that's nearly universal. Maybe it's not a weakness. Maybe it's a requirement for developing the kind of intelligence needed for civilization. The Vril achieved civilization by eliminating such attachments. Did you? Taemin asked. Or did you achieve civilization first and then eliminate the attachments after you were already established? The Queen was silent again. Around them, the assembled Vril were clicking to each other in low voices. The perfect order of the throne chamber had been disrupted. What do you propose, human? The Queen asked finally. Let me keep the child, Taemin said. It's bonded to me. Separating us would cause it psychological damage. You said it was scheduled for termination anyway. Instead, let it live. Let it grow up with someone who will care for it. And in exchange, nothing. I'm not asking for political favors or deals. I'm just asking you to let a child live. The Queen moved closer, until she was standing right in front of Taemin. Up close, she was terrifying. Massive and powerful and completely alien. But when she looked at the child sleeping in Taemin's arms, something in her posture changed. That specimen, she said softly, is my genetic offspring. One of thousands produced in the royal breeding program. When it emerged with defects, protocol demanded immediate termination. But I delayed. Taemin's eyes widened. This is your child. Genetically. Not in the way you would understand parenthood. I have never touched it, never spoken to it, never acknowledged it. The Queen's voice had a quality Taemin had never heard from a Vril before. Something almost like pain. That would be weakness. That would be inefficiency. She reached out one massive arm. Slowly, carefully, she touched the child's carapace with one claw. The child stirred but didn't wake. In 3 days, the Queen said, You have given my offspring something I could not provide in months. Joy, safety, the thing your species calls care. She pulled her arm back. Very well, Commander Taemin. You will raise the child. And in exchange, I will grant humanity not just peace with the Vril Empire, but alliance. You will teach us what we have forgotten. The throne chamber erupted in shocked clicks and chittering. But the queen raised all four arms and silence fell. This audience is ended. The human delegation will be given quarters. The specimen, she paused. The child will remain with its chosen parent. As guards escorted them out, Taemin looked back at the queen. She was still standing there, staring at her hand that had touched the child. For just a moment, she looked less like an all-powerful monarch and more like someone who had lost something precious and only now realized it was gone. 6 months had changed everything. Taemin sat on the porch of his small house on New Pyongyang, a human colony world on the edge of explored space. The evening air was warm and smelled like the purple flowers that grew wild in the fields. Inside, he could hear Ji-woo making dinner and singing something off-key. In the yard, Lixin was playing. The child had a name now. The Vril designation had been a number, cold and clinical. Taemin and Ji-woo had spent a week trying to find something better. Lixin had been Ji-woo's suggestion. It sounded a little like the clicking sounds the child made when happy. Lixin was bigger now, about the size of a 6-year-old human child. The Vril grew fast in their first years. The mottled blue and green carapace had darkened into a beautiful pattern that reminded Taemin of Earth's oceans. 3 arms were learning to work together with surprising coordination. Right now, Lixin was trying to teach a game to a group of human children from the colony. The rules kept changing because Lixin would forget them or make up new ones. The human kids didn't seem to mind. They ran and laughed and played, and Lixin's happy clicking sounds mixed with their voices. "Food's ready," Ji-woo called from inside. Taemin stood up. "Lixin, dinner time!" The child looked up and came running on 3 legs, the strange gait that was becoming familiar. Lixin crashed into Taemin's legs in a hug, nearly knocking him over. "Careful," Taemin laughed. "You're getting strong." Inside, they sat at the table. Lixin had trouble with human utensils, so they ate with their claws, which was perfectly fine. The child could eat human food, though Hyun-sik had to fortify it with extra minerals to match Vril biology. "How was school?" Ji-woo asked. Lixin clicked and chirped, the translator rendering it as, "Teacher Kim says my math is good, but my handwriting is bad." "Well, you have 3 hands instead of 2, Taemin said. "Maybe we need to find a different way for you to write. Can I get a tablet, like the big kids have?" "We'll see." It was so normal, so domestic. Sometimes Taemin had to remind himself that he was raising an alien child from a species that had threatened to exterminate humanity just 6 months ago. After dinner, as Ji-woo was getting Lixin ready for bed, Taemin's communication console chimed. Official channel, encrypted. He answered it. The hologram that appeared made him straighten in surprise. "Queen Vexara." "Your Majesty," he said quickly. "Commander, I hope I am not interrupting." "No, of course not. Is something wrong?" The Queen was silent for a moment. "I wish to visit. Tomorrow, if that is acceptable." This would be her 4th visit. The first had been stiff and formal. The Queen had stood in their living room like a statue, watching Lixin play but not interacting. The child had hidden behind Taemin's legs, scared of the massive Vril. But each visit had been different. The Queen was learning, slowly, awkwardly, but learning. "You're always welcome, Your Majesty," Taemin said. "I will arrive in the afternoon. And Commander, I would like to try the thing you suggested, the game." Taemin smiled. "We'll be ready." The connection ended. From the bedroom, he could hear Ji-woo reading a story to Lixin. The child loves stories, especially ones about adventures and heroes. Taemin looked out the window at the colony lights twinkling in the distance. It looked peaceful, but he knew better. The Queen's decision to ally with humanity and start changing Vril society had split the Empire. Half of the Vril space was in open rebellion. The traditionalists, they called themselves. They believed the Queen had been corrupted by mammalian weakness and that the Empire's strength was being destroyed. There had already been 3 assassination attempts on the Queen, 2 small battles in border systems. And the rhetoric was getting worse. The traditionalists were calling for the child to be corrected and the Queen to be deposed. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, Taemin just wanted to enjoy his family. The next afternoon, a Vril shuttle landed in the field behind the house. The Queen emerged, flanked by 4 guards. She had insisted on minimal security despite the danger. "I will not hide from my own people," she had told Taemin. Lixin ran out to meet her, no longer afraid. The child had learned that this giant Vril was safe. Important. Special. "Mother," Lixin called. The Queen flinched every time the child used that word, but she knelt down, bringing her massive form closer to Lixin's level. "Hello, small one," she said in her formal way. "Have you been well?" "I got a gold star in math. Want to see?" Lixin ran back into the house. The Queen looked at Taemin with what might have been bewilderment. "A gold star?" she asked. "A reward system the teacher uses," Taemin explained. "For good work." "Ah, positive reinforcement. We use similar methods in Vril training facilities." "It's a little different when it comes from someone who cares about you," Jiwoo said, joining them. "Makes it mean more." The Queen's antennae did their complicated movement that Taemin had learned meant she was thinking hard about something. Lixin returned with a piece of paper covered in math problems and a shiny gold sticker. The Queen examined it carefully. "This is excellent work," she said. "You should be proud." Lixin beamed, clicking happily. Later, they tried the game. It was simple. Catch. Taemin threw a softball, and Lixin caught it with their 3 arms and threw it back. Basic. Something human children had played for thousands of years. "Your Majesty," Taemin said, "would you like to try?" The Queen looked at the ball like it was a dangerous weapon. "I do not know the rules." "There are no rules. You just throw it and catch it. It's fun." "Fun," the Queen repeated the word like it was foreign. It probably was. The Vril didn't have a concept of play. Not anymore. But she tried. Her first throw was too hard, and the ball sailed over the fence. Lixin laughed and ran to get it. The Queen's second try was too soft, and it landed at her feet, but the third throw was perfect. Lixin caught it and threw it back. The Queen caught it in one massive hand. And for just a second, Taemin saw what might have been surprise on her alien face. They played for 20 minutes. The Queen's movements became more relaxed, less stiff. At one point, Lixin missed a catch, and the ball hit them on the head. The child laughed, and the Queen made a sound that the translator struggled with before settling on laughter. After the game, they sat on the porch. The Queen watched Lixin play in the yard with a neighbor's dog, an old retriever named Max, who had adopted the alien child as a member of his pack. "I do not understand it," the Queen said quietly. "I have ruled an empire for 40 years. I have conquered systems and commanded fleets. I have never failed at anything I attempted. But this simple thing of being a parent, I do not know how." "None of us do at first," Jiwoo said gently. "You learn as you go." "The child loves you both, but it barely knows me. I am simply the large Vril who visits sometimes." "You're its mother," Taemin said. "Biologically and legally. That means something." "Does it? I left the child in isolation for months. I would have had it killed. You saved its life. You give it a home, love, safety. What have I given?" "A chance," Taemin said. You made a choice that went against everything your culture taught you. You let Lixin live. You're trying to learn. That's not nothing." The Queen was quiet for a long time. Then, "My advisors tell me I am destroying the Empire. That this experiment with emotions and families will make us weak. Half my people are in rebellion because of it." "Are they right?" Jiwoo asked. "I do not know. But I look at that child playing with an earth animal, speaking 2 languages, learning mathematics and art and stories. I see something the Vril have not had in 10,000 years. I see potential that is not just about genetic perfection or military strength." She stood up. "I must return. But before I go, I have news. The traditionalists are gathering a fleet. They are coming here." Taemin's blood went cold. "When?" 3 days, perhaps 4. They demand that the child be surrendered for proper correction. They demand that I abdicate the throne. What will you do?" Queen Vexara looked at Lixin, still playing in the yard. The child was trying to teach Max how to catch with 3 paws. "I will do what any parent would do," the Queen said. "I will protect my child." That night, after Lixin was asleep, Taemin and Jiwoo sat in the dark living room. "We should evacuate," Jiwoo said. "Take Lixin somewhere safe." "There is nowhere safe. If the traditionalists win, they'll hunt us across the galaxy." "So what do we do?" Taemin looked at the bedroom door where Lixin slept. "We trust the Queen, and we hope that love is stronger than hate." 3 days later, the traditionalist fleet arrived. 40 ships bristling with weapons, demanding the child's surrender. But they found the Queen's fleet waiting, and for the first time in Vril history, the Queen herself stood on the command deck, not in safety behind her advisors. She opened a communication channel to the traditionalist commander. "You wish to take my child," she said. "You will have to go through me." The battle was about to begin, and Taemin stood on the ground, holding Lixin close, watching the ships in the sky and hoping that the galaxy was ready for what came next. The sky above New Pyongyang turned into hell. Taemin had seen space battles before on screens and simulations, but never like this, never directly overhead, never with his child clinging to him in terror as ships the size of cities exchanged fire that lit up the atmosphere like artificial lightning. "Get down!" Jiwoo shouted, pulling them both behind the concrete barrier of their home's shelter. Hyun-sik was already there with a dozen other colonists, their faces pale with fear. "The shields are holding," Hyun-sik said, checking his tablet. "The Queen's ships are positioned between us and the traditionalists. They're protecting the colony." "How long can they hold?" a colonist asked. "I don't know." Lixin whimpered against Taemin's chest. The child was trying to be brave, but the sounds of battle were terrifying. Each explosion made the ground shake. The translator couldn't keep up with all the clicking sounds Lixin was making, but Taemin understood anyway. The child was asking for it to stop, asking to be safe, asking why the Vril were fighting. "It's okay," Taemin whispered, though it wasn't. "The Queen will protect us." High above, Queen Vexara stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the battle unfold. Her 4 arms moved across control interfaces with perfect precision. But inside, she was struggling with feelings she had no name for. Fear, not for herself, but for the small child on the planet below. Anger, at those who would harm an innocent being for the crime of being different. Determination, to protect her offspring no matter the cost. These emotions would have been called weakness by Vril standards, but right now they made her stronger than she had ever been. "Your Majesty," her tactical officer reported, "the traditionalists are attempting to break through our left flank. They're trying to reach the planet's surface." "Reinforce that position," the Queen commanded. "Nothing gets through. We're outnumbered 2-1. If they focus all their fire..." "I said nothing gets through." A new voice crackled over the communications. Commander Hana, one of the Queen's most loyal officers. "Your Majesty, human reinforcements have arrived. Earth is sending their third fleet." The Queen's antennae rose in surprise. On her tactical display, she saw 20 human ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. They were smaller than Vril vessels, but they moved with impressive coordination. The lead human ship opened a channel. Admiral Park's face appeared on screen. "Queen Vexara, Earth stands with you. Where do you need us?" The Queen felt something she had no word for. Gratitude, humans would call it. "The right flank is weak," she said. "If you could provide support there, already on it. And ma'am, we're not going to let them hurt that kid." The tide of battle began to shift. Human ships were smaller and less powerful than Vril vessels, but they fought with a ferocity that surprised the traditionalists. They flew in close, taking risks no Vril captain would consider. They protected each other, coordinated like a single organism. They fought like family protecting family. The traditionalist commander, a massive Vril named Krixar, watched his advantage disappear. He opened a channel to all ships. "The humans prove our point," he broadcast. "See how they corrupt rational thought? The Queen fights alongside mammals against her own people. This is what emotional weakness does." But some of the traditionalist ships hesitated. Their crews had been watching the battle, watching the Queen put herself at risk, watching humans die to protect a Vril child they had never met. 3 traditionalist ships broke formation and withdrew. Then 5 more, then 10. Krixar saw his fleet crumbling. In rage, he made a desperate decision. If he couldn't win the battle, he would accomplish his mission. He would kill the defective child and make an example of what happened to those who abandoned Vril perfection. His ship, the largest in the traditionalist fleet, turned toward the planet. Its weapons charged, targeting the colony below. On the ground, alarms screamed. Hyunsik looked at his tablet and went white. "That ship is targeting us directly. If it fires—" He didn't need to finish. Everyone understood. The shelter would mean nothing against that kind of firepower. Lixin looked up at Tae-min with huge, frightened eyes. "Father?" "I've got you," Tae-min said, holding the child tighter. "I've got you." In space, the Queen saw what Krixar was doing, saw the trajectory, saw the weapons charging. And she made a calculation that had nothing to do with logic or strategy or the survival of the Empire. She made a choice based purely on love. "Full speed," she commanded. "Intercept course. Put us between that ship and the planet." "Your Majesty, we can't reach position in time to—" "Do it!" Her flagship accelerated with everything it had. The enormous vessel moved with desperate speed, positioning itself directly in the path of Krixar's weapons. Krixar fired. The Queen's shields flared bright enough to be seen from the planet's surface. The ship shuddered under the impact. Warning lights flashed across every console. Hull breaches on multiple decks. Power systems failing, shields at 15% and dropping. But the shot meant for the colony had been absorbed. "Return fire!" the Queen ordered. Her voice steady despite the ship falling apart around her. "Full weapons!" Her fleet poured everything into Krixar's ship. Human vessels joined the barrage. The traditionalist flagship's shields collapsed. Its hull cracked open. Krixar's last transmission was a scream of rage before his ship exploded in a ball of fire. The remaining traditionalist ships scattered. Some withdrew into faster-than-light travel. Others surrendered. The battle was over, but the Queen's flagship was dying. "Your Majesty, we need to evacuate," her tactical officer said. "The ship won't hold together much longer. Get the crew to the escape pods. I will be the last to leave." "Your Majesty, that is an order." On the planet's surface, the all-clear sounded. Tae-min emerged from the shelter, still holding Lixin. The sky was full of debris and burning wreckage, but the firing had stopped. "We're safe," Ji-woo said, relief flooding her voice. "The Queen did it. She stopped them." Then Hyunsik pointed up. "The flagship. Something's wrong. They could see it even from the ground. The massive vessel was listing, trailing fire and debris. Parts of it were breaking off. "She's going down," Hyun-sik whispered. Tae-min felt ice in his chest. "Can they evacuate?" "At that altitude with those damage readings? Some will, but not everyone." Lixin suddenly understood. The child's translator crackled to life with a wail of pure anguish. "Mother! Mother is on that ship!" "She'll get out," Tae-min said, trying to sound confident. "She has escape pods. She'll—" The flagship broke apart in the upper atmosphere. Pieces of it burned up on re-entry. Others crashed into the ocean miles from the colony. Emergency beacons lit up across Tae-min's tablet as escape pods launched. But the Queen's beacon wasn't among them. Rescue ships were already launching. Tae-min watched them search the debris field with growing dread. Minutes passed like hours. Lixin cried against his shoulder, making sounds of grief that needed no translation. Then a signal, weak, barely registering. A single escape pod, badly damaged, had landed in the forest 10 miles from the colony. Tae-min didn't think. He just ran for the nearest transport, Lixin still in his arms. Ji-woo and Hyun-sik followed. They reached the crash site to find the pod crumpled against a tree. Emergency crews were already working to pry it open. When they finally got the hatch free, the Queen emerged. She was badly hurt. One arm was clearly broken. Cracks ran through her carapace, leaking the fluid that served as vril blood. She could barely stand. But when she saw Lixin, something in her expression changed. "Small one," she said weakly. "You are safe?" Lixin scrambled out of Tae-min's arms and ran to the Queen. The child threw 3 small arms around one of the Queen's massive legs and sobbed. "Mother hurt. Mother hurt protecting me." The Queen swayed. Hyun-sik rushed forward with his medical equipment. "Your Majesty, you need immediate treatment. This fluid loss—" "The child," the Queen said. "Is the child injured?" "No, Lixin is fine. You saved everyone." The Queen looked down at Lixin clinging to her. Slowly, carefully, she wrapped her good arms around the child. It was awkward, unpracticed, but it was a hug. "I understand now," the Queen said softly. "Why you humans fight so hard, why you love so fiercely. It is not weakness. It is the strongest force in the universe." She looked at Tae-min. "I could not let them hurt my child. Logic said I should preserve myself for the Empire. Strategy said I should sacrifice the colony for the greater good, but I could not. Would not." "That's what parents do," Tae-min said, his own eyes wet. "They protect their children, no matter what." The Queen's legs gave out. Hyun-sik and the medical team caught her before she fell. As they worked to stabilize her, Lixin held on to one of her hands and wouldn't let go. "I am here, Mother," the child said. "I am here." And the Queen, who had ruled an empire through cold logic and perfect control, who had never shown weakness in 40 years of reign, allowed herself to cry. 1 year had passed since the Battle of New Pyongyang. Tae-min stood in the garden behind his house, watching Lixin practice writing with a specially designed tablet. The child's carapace had darkened to a beautiful deep blue-green, and growth had slowed to a more normal pace. At this rate, Hyun-sik estimated Lixin would be fully grown in another 10 years. "Father, look!" Lixin called. "I wrote a whole paragraph without any mistakes." "That's great. Show me later at dinner. I need to check on the visitors." The house was different now, bigger. They had built extra rooms to accommodate the steady stream of vril who came to see what a family looked like. Reformed vril, they called themselves. Those who had chosen to follow Queen Vexara's new path. In the living room, a vril couple sat awkwardly on reinforced furniture, holding their own child. The youngling was even smaller than Lixin had been, with a pure black carapace and all 4 arms, healthy by traditional standards, but the parents looked terrified. "We do not know what to do," the father said. His name was Talix, and he kept his voice formal despite the circumstances. "The child cries. We have provided optimal nutrition and climate control, but it continues to express distress." Jiwoo sat across from them, patient and understanding. She had become an unofficial expert in helping Vril learn to parent. "Have you tried holding it?" she asked gently. "Holding? We support its weight when necessary for transport. No, I mean really holding. Like this." Jiwoo demonstrated with a stuffed toy, cradling it close. "Just for comfort. Not because you need to move it anywhere, just to be close." The mother, Rixa, looked skeptical. "The child care manuals make no mention of such procedures." "Because Vril haven't used those manuals in 10,000 years, Taemin said, joining them. "Your instincts are older than those books. Trust them." Hesitantly, Rixa picked up her child. Instead of holding it at arm's length like a package, she pulled it close against her chest. The youngling immediately stopped crying. It made small clicking sounds and nestled closer. Rixa's antennae quivered. It seems content." "Because it feels safe," Jiwoo said. "That's all children really want, to feel safe and loved." Talix looked at his partner and child with an expression that was slowly learning to show emotion. "We were told this would make us weak. That caring for our own offspring would compromise our effectiveness." "And?" Taemin asked. "I have never felt stronger," Talix said quietly. After the couple left, looking happier than when they arrived, Taemin stepped outside. A transport was landing in the field. He knew who it would be. Queen Vexara had recovered from her injuries, though she still moved with a slight limp. The cracks in her carapace had healed into silver scars that she wore without shame. Some said they made her look weak. Others said they made her look like a warrior who had fought for something that mattered. She visited twice a week now. The Imperial flagship was stationed in orbit, and she maintained her rule from there, but more and more of her time was spent on the surface, learning to be a mother. Lixin saw her and ran over, arms wide. The queen knelt and caught the child in a hug that had become natural over months of practice. "Hello, small one. How was your day?" "Good. I wrote a whole paragraph, and Teacher Kim says my drawing is really good. Want to see?" "I would be honored." They walked toward the house together, the massive queen and the small child, talking about art and homework and the neighbor's dog. It was ordinary, domestic, completely revolutionary for the Vril species. That evening, after Lixin was in bed, the adults sat on the porch. The queen had brought news. "The traditionalist remnants have established their own territory," she said. 3 systems in the outer rim. They refuse all contact with the reformed Vril. They say we are contaminated, corrupted by mammalian weakness." "How many of your people joined them?" Jiwoo asked. 40% of the Empire. The rest have chosen to stay and learn these new ways." The queen looked at her hands, some enthusiastically, some with fear and confusion, all of them struggling. "Change is hard," Taemin said. "Yes, but I see the results. Vril who are learning to parent their own children perform better in all tasks. They are more creative, more motivated. They collaborate more effectively. The very weakness the traditionalists feared is making us stronger in ways we never predicted." "It's not weakness," Jiwoo said. "It never was. Love is the foundation of civilization. You can't build a society that lasts without it." The queen was quiet for a moment. "I have been invited to speak at the Galactic Council. They wish to hear about the reformed Vril and our alliance with humanity." "Will you go?" Taemin asked. "Yes, and I would like Lixin to come with me, to show them what is possible when species learn from each other. That's a big responsibility for a child. Lixin does not need to do anything except exist. That is enough. A Vril child raised by humans and Vril together, happy and healthy and loved. That proves more than any speech I could give." 3 weeks later, they arrived at the Galactic Council headquarters. The station was enormous, home to representatives from over 100 species. The Grand Assembly Hall could hold thousands. Taemin had never seen so many different forms of life in one place. Beings with tentacles, wings, scales, fur, and features he couldn't even describe. All of them had come to hear the Queen speak about the transformation of the Vril Empire. Lixin held Taemin's hand tightly, overwhelmed by the crowd. Jiwoo stayed close on the other side. The Queen walked ahead of them, her presence commanding attention. When she took the podium, silence fell. "I am Queen Vexara of the Vril," she began. "For 10,000 years my species has been feared across this galaxy. We conquered through strength. We ruled through perfection. We believed we had evolved beyond the primitive need for emotional bonds." She paused, letting the words settle. "We were wrong." A murmur ran through the assembly. We had not evolved beyond emotion. We had simply suppressed it, denied it, pretended it did not exist, and in doing so we became less than we could have been. We became hollow victories and empty conquests. We became strong in ways that did not matter and weak in ways that did. The Queen gestured to Lixin. The child walked forward hesitantly. Taemin gave an encouraging nod. "This is my offspring," the Queen said. "By the laws of the old Vril Empire, this child should have been destroyed at birth for genetic defects. Instead, it was saved by a human who showed compassion when we showed none. Commander Taemin of Earth saw a child in distress and responded with care, not because of strategy, not because of potential gain, but because it was the right thing to do." Lixin stood beside the Queen, small and different, living proof of what was possible. "The child calls me mother," the Queen continued, "and calls Commander Taemin father. This should be impossible. Our species are completely different. We share no common biology. We evolved on worlds 100 light-years apart. And yet this child has taught me something I had forgotten was possible. Love crosses all boundaries. Care transcends species. Family is not defined by genetics but by choice and commitment. These are not weaknesses. These are the foundations of everything meaningful." She looked out at the assembled species. "The reformed Vril are learning to be families again. It is painful, messy, inefficient by our old standards. But we are becoming more than we were. We are becoming whole. I stand before you not as a conqueror, but as a parent. I tell you that the strongest force in the universe is not military might or technological advancement. It is the simple act of caring for each other, of protecting those who cannot protect themselves, of building connections that matter more than power." The Queen placed one hand on Lixin's shoulder. "This child is the bridge between our peoples. But more than that, this child is proof that we can all choose to be better than we are. We can all evolve not through becoming harder or more perfect, but through becoming more open, more compassionate, more alive." She stepped back from the podium. For a moment, the assembly was silent. Then one delegate began to clap, then another, then 100, then 1,000. The applause thundered through the hall, not because the Queen promised power or offered threats, but because she had spoken a truth that resonated across every species present. Later, in their quarters, Lixin was exhausted but happy. The child had met so many beings, received so much attention. Now Lixin wanted nothing more than to be with family. "Father, will we go home soon?" Lixin asked. "In a few days? Missing New Pyongyang?" "Missing Max, and my friends, and my room." The Queen sat nearby, watching them with something that looked like contentment. "Your Majesty," Jiwoo said, "what happens now? The speech was powerful, but words only go so far." "True," the Queen agreed, "but I have been contacted by 17 species since this afternoon. All of them want to learn more about the reformed Vril, about how we are rebuilding family structures, about human-Vril cooperation." She looked at Tai Min. You started something when you saved one child. A ripple that is becoming a wave. The galaxy is watching, some with hope, some with fear, but all of them are paying attention. I just helped a kid who was scared, Tai-Min said. Yes, and that simple act of compassion is changing the galaxy. Because you showed us that the things we thought made us weak are actually what make life worth living. 50 years later, Tai-Min was old. His hair was white, his body tired. Ji-Woo sat beside him in the audience, her hand in his. On the stage, Lixin stood as the first dual-species ambassador, representing both Vril and human interests. The child who had called him father had grown into a brilliant diplomat, building bridges between worlds. The galaxy had changed. The reformed Vril had grown to encompass 70% of the old empire. The traditionalists still existed in their isolated systems, but each year, more of them defected. Each year, more chose love over perfection. 30 other species had adopted family structures based on what they learned from watching humans and Vril. Cultural exchange programs flourished. Wars decreased. Cooperation increased, all because one human had seen a scared child and decided to help. Queen Vexara, now called Mother Vexara by millions, sat in the place of honor. She was old, too, her carapace dulled with age, her movements slow. But when she looked at Lixin, her eyes still showed pride and love. After the ceremony, they gathered in a garden overlooking the city. 3 generations, Tai-Min and Ji-Woo, now grandparents to several human children. Lixin, with a Vril partner and their own child. And the Queen, matriarch of a transformed civilization. Do you ever regret it? Ji-Woo asked Tai-Min quietly. That day you opened the chamber? Tai-Min looked at his family. Human and Vril, mixing naturally, loving unconditionally. He looked at the city beyond, where 100 species lived and worked together. He looked at the galaxy that had been forever changed by one simple choice. Not for a second, he said. And across the garden, the Queen caught his eye and made a gesture Lixin had taught her decades ago. A human gesture, warm and unmistakable. A smile. In that moment, surrounded by family, Tai-Min knew that the greatest adventures were not found in conquering worlds or commanding fleets. They were found in the simple, profound act of caring for each other. The galaxy had learned what humanity had always known, that love was not weakness. It was everything.